Two timeless films released in 1969. 1969 was a landmark year in American cinema, producing iconic films that explored complex characters and social themes. To this day, two films stood above the rest: Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and Midnight Cowboy. Our analysis of two timeless tales. Both films were groundbreaking story-telling and character-driven narratives. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid combined Western action with a buddy film dynamic reflecting changed attitudes toward heroes and anti-heroes in cinema. Midnight Cowboy broke new ground as a gritty urban drama exploring the themes of friendship, survival, and loneliness in New York City. Behind each film reflected the style of its director. For Butch Cassidy, it was American George Leroy Hill, and for Midnight Cowboy, British John Schlesinger. George Roy Hill, 1921 to 2002, directed blockbusters Hawaii in 1966 and Thoroughly Modern Millie 1967, both starring Julie Andrews. He later directed another Newman Redford hit, The Sting, in 1973, with Redford in The Great Waldo Pepper 1975 and with Newman in Slapshot 1977. John Schlesinger, 1926 to 2003, started his career making successful British dramas before Hollywood films. A Kind of Loving, 1962, Billy Liar, 1963, Darling, 1965, and Far from the Maddening Crowd, 1967. Schlesinger continued his success with 1973 Sunday Bloody Sunday, 1975 both The Day of the Locust and Marathon Man that starred Dustin Hoffman. He continued producing films until his death in 2003, though none were as successful as his earlier works. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is a classic Western buddy film that follows outlaws fleeing a U.S. posse after bank and train robberies, escaping to Bolivia to avoid capture. Directed by George Roy Hill and written by William Goldman, this Western buddy film stars Paul Newman, Robert Redford, and Catherine Ross. Originally, Paul Newman and Steve McQueen agreed to do the film. Robert Redford was cast after McQueen backed out of the film due to disagreement with Newman. George Roy Hill at first had Redford as Butch and Newman as Sundance. Redford suggested the switch. Butch Cassidy is based upon Robert Leroy Parker, born 1866, an American bank and train robber, the leader of a gang known as the Wild Bunch. Parker engaged in criminal activity for more than a decade at the end of the 19th century. The pressures of being pursued by law enforcement, Butch, with his accomplice Harry Longabaugh, the Sundance Kid, and Longabaugh's girlfriend Etta Place, traveled first to Argentina and then to Bolivia, where Parker and Longabaugh are believed to have been killed in a shootout by the Bolivian army in 1908. Prior to Butch Cassidy, Westerns reflected rugged individualists, soft-spoken but prone to violence when the need arises. Two films released earlier in 1969 fit that mold. One was True Grit, starring John Wayne, who received for his only Best Actor Oscar for the role. John Wayne said, "Wow, if I had known that, I'd have put that patch on 35 years earlier. Even more violent was Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch, considered at the time the most graphic Western ever made. In fact, Butch Cassidy's gang was known as the Wild Bunch, but was renamed the Hole in the Wall Gang to avoid any belief by the audience that Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch were similar films. Contrary to most previous westerns, Butch Cassidy began as a light-hearted hijinks. The atmosphere of the film changed when Butch's gang used too much dynamite to open a safe in a train car. Members of the gang are killed, and a hired posse began their chase of Butch and Sundance. During the chase, one memorable line of the film was, "Who are those guys?" Midnight Cowboy overview. Midnight Cowboy depicts the evolving friendship between two misfits as they navigate the urban landscape of New York City, capturing the challenging raw environment of city life. Directed by John Schlesinger, stars Dustin Hoffman as conman Rico Rizzo and John Voight as naive hustler Joe Buck. The Midnight Cowboy is based on a 1965 novel of the same name by James Leo Hurley. Schlesinger was interested in adapting it shortly after its publication. He was openly gay, observed that Midnight Cowboy was the first commercial film that did not treat homosexuality as hysterical or funny. Midnight Cowboy faced major hurdles in both funding and distribution. By 1968, the strict guidelines for Hollywood films, the Motion Picture Production Code, were loosened considerably. However, male prostitution, homosexuality, and urban decay were still considered taboo. Director John Schlesinger struggled to find a screenwriter who could handle the material. After several failed attempts, Waldo Salt was brought in and spent 9 months crafting the screenplay. Major studios were reluctant to back the project due to the controversial content. It was ultimately financed by United Artists, which operated more like an independent distributor and was known for taking risks on unconventional films. Hoffman and Voight were not the first choices to star in the film. Peter O'Toole was first offered the Rico Rizzo role, but turned it down. The role was next offered to Voight, who really wanted the Joe Buck role. Director John Schlesinger wanted Michael Sarrazin as Joe Buck. When Sarrazin was unable to gain release from his contract with Universal, Voight offered to play the role at scale, $17,000. In contrast, Dustin Hoffman, who was already famous from The Graduate 1967, was paid about $125,000, making him the top paid actor. Speaking of Dustin Hoffman, he knew that the all-American image that he carried after The Graduate 1967 could easily cost him the job. To prove that he could play Rizzo, he asked the auditioning film executive to meet him on a street corner in Manhattan. Hoffman dressed in filthy rags. The executive arrived at the appointed corner and waited, barely noticing the beggar not 10 feet away who was accosting people for spare change. The beggar finally walked up to him and revealed his true identity. During filming, Hoffman kept pebbles in his shoe to ensure his limp would be consistent from shot to shot. Midnight Cowboy's most famous scene depicts Voight and Hoffman walking down the street when Hoffman is nearly hit by a cab. He hits the vehicle and shouts the iconic quote, "Hey, I'm walking here," becoming one of the most quotable lines in movie history. It aptly summarizes the movie's central theme that every person, no matter how humble, deserves basic dignity and respect. Contrasting setting and atmosphere. Midnight Cowboy, urban grit. Set in the bustling streets of New York City, the film captures a harsh, realistic atmosphere emphasizing loneliness and survival in a concrete jungle. Butch Cassidy, Wild Frontier, featuring the vast open spaces of the American West, a sense of freedom and adventure, but also the closing of an era. Character comparison. Midnight Cowboy characters. The relationship between Joe and Rico evolves from mutual exploitation to genuine friendship and care. The characters represented themes of loneliness, survival, and the harsh realities of urban life. Butch Cassidy characters. The partnership of Butch and Sundance is the struggle to escape law enforcement. Their characters portray the romanticized outlaw lifestyle and the challenges of loyalty and survival on the run. The chemistry between the lead actors in both films, Paul Newman and Robert Redford, Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight, became iconic and set new standards for on-screen partnerships. Paul Newman, 1925 to 2008, and Robert Redford, 1936 to 2025. Jon Voight, born 1938, and Dustin Hoffman, born 1937. These movies push the boundaries of genre conventions. Butch Cassidy revitalized the westerns with humor and style, while Midnight Cowboy addressed mature and controversial social issues. At the 42nd Academy Awards, Midnight Cowboy won Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Midnight Cowboy bested Butch Cassidy in the Best Picture and Best Director category, though Butch Cassidy did win Best Original Story and Best Song. Both Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman were nominated for Best Actor award, but lost to John Wayne for True Grit. Producer Jerome Hellman, 1928 to 2021. Butch Cassidy did win out at the movie box office. It was the top grossing film in 1969, over $102 million. Midnight Cowboy, with X rating, grossed half as much, though a respectable $45 million. Other top films of 1969 included The Love Bug, Easy Rider, Hello Dolly, Bob Carroll, Ted and Alice, Paint Your Wagon, True Grit, Cactus Flower, and Goodbye Columbus. Midnight Cowboy is the only X-rated film to win Academy Awards Best Picture. Today, the film is only NC-17, unsuitable for viewers under 18 years old. Sample of scenes considered less graphic today than in 1969. But even today, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is more popular than Midnight Cowboy, primarily due to its blend of humor, adventure, and star power of Paul Newman and Robert Redford. Its appealing, optimistic narrative contrasted with Midnight Cowboy's darker themes and tone, making it more accessible to wider audiences. Originally, the movie was too funny, something that concerned director George Roy Hill. In its first preview screening, audiences went wild with loud, extended laughter. Hill didn't like this and worried about audiences laughing at a tragedy. He removed some of the bigger laughs. But one thing Hill kept in the film was an upbeat soundtrack, including the pop song for a romantic bicycle scene between Butch and Etta Place. Raindrops Kept Falling on My Head was written by Burt Baccarat and Hal David. Okay. B.J. Thomas rendered Raindrops. When it was first heard by the cast, Redford did not like it, calling it dumb and wondered how it fit with the film. The song was the Academy Awards 1970 Best Original Song. The song reached number one on the Billboard Hot 100 in January 1970. Its sales exceeded 1 million copies, with Thomas being awarded his third gold record. It was inducted in the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2014. On the other hand, Everybody's Talking song was first released in late 1966 by Fred Neil. Harry Nilsson rewrote the song intended for his next album. While writing songs for Midnight Cowboy, director Schlesinger heard Nilsson's rendition of Everybody's Talking. He used it as the film's theme song. He reprised the song throughout the film. William J. Mann, in his biography of Schlesinger, noted that one cannot imagine Midnight Cowboy now without Everybody's Talking. Nilsson was a favorite with the Beatles and the Monkees. He died of congenital heart failure in 1994 at the young age of 52. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is a venturous, light-hearted Western that blends humor with drama, emphasizing camaraderie and the romanticism of outlaws. In contrast, Midnight Cowboy's candid exploration of loneliness, friendship, and survival in a harsh city environment opened the door for more realistic, adult-themed films in Hollywood. Hill had a knack for narrative clarity, actor-focused direction, and a subtle emotional undercurrent. His films feel deceptively light on the surface, but carry deeper reflections on identity, freedom, and disillusionment. Hill's films are foremost photographed beautifully. He did add innovations like freeze frames, Butch Cassidy, chapter breaks, The Sting, and washed out color transitions, subtle but effective stylish choices. Schlesinger's frankness about sexuality and alienation opened doors for taboo themes in Hollywood. His gritty, emphatic lens in Midnight Cowboy paved the way for more films that explored social realism, emotional intimacy, identity, and relationships. His documentary-style shooting and environmental storytelling are reflected in many of today's films and TV shows. Complex relationships with endings that are emotionally messiness and morally ambiguous. Both films continue to be studied and celebrated in film schools and retrospectives, underscoring their importance in American film history and their influence on filmmakers. For more Gong About presentations, check out YouTube/@Gong4It.